Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, that was really awful. Come on. Grüezi miteinander. Hello, everybody. Hi, we're going to expect a lot more from you. And welcome to the AI for Sustainability session. And first of all, thank you for choosing to be here on this beautiful Friday afternoon. We have a fantastic session this afternoon. It's a real privilege and a pleasure for me to be able to stand up here to guide us through these next couple of hours. My name is Chris Lubkeman. I have the pleasure and the honor to be within the Office of the President and lead our Strategic Foresight Initiative. The arc of our time together this afternoon has two parts. The first part will be 3 presentations, and the second part will be an opportunity for you to literally sit with our guests and have more of a personal interaction with them, to think about what you could do with what you hear, what you learn about, and to think with them about what else you could do. So there will be a pause in between, and things being what they are, some of you are going to try to get away. If you do, we have sheepdogs out there who are going to bark at you to keep you here, but I'm just kidding. We're going to have you make sure before you go to lunch or whatever you were going to do with it, we want you to fill out something. So you cannot leave. If you really have to go, you need to fill out a card, which we'll be passing out to you. So that's the only thing we ask of you that you have to do. So before we dig into this, I'd like to have Jan come on up. Jan? Jan is the brain push. I would say the brain child, but you're not a child. You're the brain push behind this afternoon session. So why are we doing this right now?
So when I heard about this session, the ETF's organized session, I thought it would be a great possibility, it would be a great opportunity to talk about 2 topics that are not commonly mentioned together, which is artificial intelligence and sustainability. And this is something we are going to do today. So to convince you that machine learning and AI in general is just a great tool to achieve a more sustainable world.
And so who are the 3, why did you choose the 3 speakers? Because they're pretty amazing people. I looked them up and I've been able to talk with them.
Yes, exactly. So and then I thought, okay, who could give a really exciting talk about a side of AI that you have not heard about before, really? And I thought the first one is Charity Wayua. So she's head of the IBM research in Nairobi. And I think she will talk a lot about this public sector impact of AI and how she helps the Kenyan government and the public authorities to achieve their sustainability goals. And as a second speaker, we have Mustafa Sise. He's the head of Google AI in Ghana and Accra. And he does research about the foundations of machine learning. And I think it's very important that we have 2 people here from the African continent, from Kenya and from Ghana, who are directly impacted by climate change, a lot of sustainability issues. And then we have Massimo Selmo here, head of global sourcing of Barry Callebaut, one of the biggest chocolate manufacturers in the world, and buyers of a lot of commodities like cocoa, palm oil, and so on, where a lot of sustainability issues arise. So, and I was thinking this is just a great group of people to really give the full picture from the very technical side and those countries where it matters to those people here in Switzerland that buy a lot and that want to meet the sustainability goals.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. It's going to be a great afternoon. So we're going to jump right in now to Charity. And we did try to have both of our guests be here physically, but they are going to be here virtually. And they're actually going to be roboting in for the second half. So we've got some little robots which are going to be able to join in our conversational circles. So Charity, I'm sure you've Googled her, research manager, IBM Africa, an organization whose mission it is to develop innovative and commercially stable, viable technologies that impact people's lives. Specifically, she spends her time, hi Charity, I see you now, hey. She spends her
Hello.
time, hi there. She spends her time developing her team's research strategy, driving execution, focusing on the application of cloud and artificial intelligence in healthcare, climate, and agriculture. Without any further ado, I'm not going to waste any more time. Charity, the stage is literally yours.
Thank you, Chris. I hope you can hear me clearly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Um, I want to start by thanking Jan, Chris, and the entire ETH family for organizing this workshop and for inviting me. And I also want to thank you all for taking the time to attend, especially on a Friday afternoon. The weather app tells me you have beautiful weather in Zurich today. So I feel honored that you've taken the time to sit here and, so that we can have a conversation on this very important topic. So let me start by sharing my screen so we can get started. All right, I think you can see my screen just well, thank you. So as you are already informed, I'm part of the research team at IBM Research Africa, which is part of the network of IBM's global research labs around the world. And our goal is to be able to develop commercially viable technologies that impact people's lives and industries. Today, I will share with you a number of projects that we're currently working on that illustrate the power of artificial intelligence to drive sustainability in food supply chains. So before I jump into the work, let me set the stage by sharing some statistics on the agriculture industry in the continent. For context, so today more than 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land is in Africa. However, the current cultivation practices, for example, the low use of fertilizer, could greatly hamper the potential of this land. So an example is a 2019 McKinsey report that highlights that Nigeria, for example, is using 8.5 times less the amount of fertilizer per hectare than the world average. So about 14 kilograms per hectare versus 120. A study done by the African Union Commission also highlighted that today Africa is a net importer of food. And if we just focus on grains alone, the estimated annual post-harvest losses are the value of that is about $4 billion. And this value is enough to feed 48 million people and is greater than the annual value of grain imports and the total value of food aid that is received in sub-Saharan Africa over the past decade. Lastly, 95% of agriculture in the continent is rain-fed. And what this means is, despite having contributed the least to global warming and having the lowest emissions, we are the most vulnerable continent to climate change. Given this backdrop, I believe artificial intelligence has the ability to play a major role in supporting the continent to achieve its sustainable development goals, be able to achieve its agriculture potential and have an ability to feed the growing population. So I just wanted to start by flashing, the Sustainable Development Goal 2.4 and highlight a few things that I think will set the context for what I will discuss today. So essentially, the aim is that by 2030, we ensure sustainable food production systems, implement resilient agricultural practices that increase productivity, be able to maintain ecosystems, strengthen our capacity for adaptation to climate change, and then progressively improve land and soil quality. I think all these things are very, very relevant for the African continent, but I would like to spend my time today focusing on three things three ways that I believe we are able to impact food supply chain sustainably, and give you examples from the work that we are doing in the research lab. So the first one will be on increasing farmer productivity. The second one is on reducing post-harvest losses, and the last one is on mitigating and adapting to climatic change. We don't have enough time today to go into the details of the amazing work that our teams have done. So I want to apologize ahead of time that I will only focus on the high level idea of what we are doing. But I am hoping that we'll be able to get into more details when we have the second part of the session. And I'm delighted to go into a lot more detail at that point. So I will begin with one of the projects that we have done that illustrates the potential of AI to increase farmer productivity. So raising crop yield per unit land area, I think for most of you know this already, it remains a key way of eliminating food shortages, especially given the limited land resources available for agriculture. And when you think about increasing farmer productivity, one way of doing this is ensuring that you can optimize all of the key inputs required for farming. So think about seed, soil, water, fertilizer, etc., with the aim of maximizing output or yield. So you require data to be able to understand how to optimize this. And the challenge with getting data, particularly from small-scale farmers, is that it's incredibly expensive to either manually collect the data. There are several organizations that perhaps use surveys, etc., which are quite, they're manual, they take a long time to do, and you don't have the most up-to-date data. So we established a collaboration with a startup known as Hello Tractor, who is known as the Uber for tractor services. They mediate tractor services among a network of farmers, agents, tractor owners, and essentially they provide a suite of services that a small-scale farmer can have access to without owning a tractor. So things like plowing, harrowing, spreading fertilizer, seeding, harvesting, you name it. So the goal of our collaboration was to utilize the data collected during these activities, be able to apply some analytics methods to it. And the idea is to be able to provide the key stakeholders, and I'll give you examples of that momentarily, with insights or recommendations for actionable things they can do. So essentially, as you can see on the image on the left, so as the tractor is performing the activities that I have highlighted, we are able to collect data using that we can access through the app that you see on the right. And what you now see on the screen on the left-hand side is an example of the data that we collect from the GPS that is attached to each of the tractors. And then we transform that data into a farm boundary and specific location. And the idea, so on the left, you see, like the green marks are just the turning points of the tractor, the daily tractor path that it's performing the different services. And then on the right is how we, are some images, the yellow shapes that you see represent specific farms that have been resolved. And essentially we're using a trace clustering method to be able to resolve these boundaries. So why is it important to be able to have a farm location and boundary? This becomes the key and critical information that is used to identify a farm, and now you can pile on additional information that allows you to define unique characteristics of this farm. So what activities have happened, what crop has been grown, its yield, etc. So on one hand, as you can see, we'll be able to get that data from the Hello Tractor application, and then we can now combine it with additional data that we get from various sources. So one example here is looking at weather data that now we can be able to attach to a very specific farm location. We can look at precipitation, temperature, humidity, all of that, and put that together so that we can be able to provide some useful information to the farmer. So the challenge then becomes how we collect enough data or label data for us to be able to perform the machine learning techniques that we're interested in. Majority of the ones we've implemented are supervised learning methods. So let me just give you a set of questions or that can be asked based on the data that we've been able to collect on our collaboration. During the pilot, we were able to collect data from over 10,000 farms, specifically in Nigeria. But this is work that will be ongoing to collect more of the data. So from a farmer perspective, we're able to ask things like, what crops or inputs are suitable, or how do we optimize the available inputs so that we can obtain the best yield. For an aggregator, is how to manage supply from different farmers, and I'll give you a very specific example of what we are doing with that. From a financier or bank, they'd be looking at how they can utilize the information from the farm level to be able to develop accurate risk models that tell them whether or not they should be able to give credit to a farmer, how much should they give them, etc. And then obviously from an insurance perspective, it's really understanding what's happening at the farm level so that they can predict the risks that impact production. So that's very, very high level on the first project that we have been working with Hello Tractor on collecting data to increase farmer productivity. Let me now switch gears a little bit to talk about another very fascinating project where we're working to reduce post-harvest losses. And this example is essentially we're utilizing the boundary and location information that I've just talked about from the first project, along with satellite data to support the reduction of post-harvest losses. And the startup we're working with is Kumwe. So let me give you some context first so that you understand what we're trying to do. So Rwanda produces more than 350,000 metric tons of maize annually, and this is mainly done by smallholders. The domestic premium market for maize exceeds 100,000 metric tons. However, as of today, only about 15,000 metric tons of this is sourced locally, and mainly because of challenges with aflatoxin, which means the farmers are not able to meet the quality requirements of the premium market. So as a result, the rest of it has to be imported from other countries, yet there is local production. Kumwe, a local startup, is solving this problem by using a COB model where they aggregate production and utilize industrial post-harvest equipment to help farmers as soon as they harvest their product to get that processed in safe conditions and thereby enabling farmers to reach the premium markets reliably and effectively. To date, they've reduced their aflatoxin rejections from 90% to less than 1% and reduced the farm handling losses from 20 to about 2%, and also increased the farmer income by 2 to 3 times. So we've collaborated with Kumwe to support their scaling efforts. And the key question we are asking here is, where is the rest of the maize so that they can reach they can be able to meet the domestic premium market, and how can they access it affordably? So the solution to this is we have developed a logistics and aggregation platform, which combines Sentinel satellite data with some machine learning methods, algorithms to essentially field boundary segmentation algorithms, and to be able to track the health, the location, health, and progress of the crops using changes in NDVI, which is a normalized difference in vegetation index. So looking at the amount of chlorophyll, and you can see that from the satellite images. And if you track it over the course of the growing season, then you can start to determine where maize is grown, what is the health of it, is it ready for harvest, etc. So just going back on this image. So the image on the left shows you the differences in NDVI between a sowing and growing season. And then our hope is to get to the image on the right, which enables you to pinpoint very specifically about where the maize is. So this is work that's ongoing. We've already done the work on the left is things we've already completed, but we're now working to get to test the solution in Rwanda so that we can get to the image on the right. So that's the second example I wanted to share with you. And I know I'm going really fast, but I hope you're at least being able to get the gist of the idea so that we can talk about it some more. The last one I want to talk about is climate shocks and how we're using some very cool AI techniques to mitigate and adapt to climatic impact. So climate shocks and high impact events like floods, heat waves, droughts have a huge impact, and particularly if you're talking about impact on small scale farmers, on small scale aggregators, etc. And so predicting when these will happen and what to do to mitigate their impact can go a long way to saving lives and livelihoods. So we're working on a project where we have a three-prong method, and the first one is around using high resolution regional climate models, so being able to get or identify high impact events at a high resolution of spatial temporally. So looking at something that you can predict in the 1 to 2 month frame and in the neighborhood of 10 to 50 kilometers. So identify the high impact event or climatic event, being able to determine the probability of its occurrence. And then once you have that, you now go in and model, we do what we call impact modeling. So this is looking at modeling and quantifying the impact of the event. So you look at maybe on demand, on supply, on infrastructure, on whatever aspect that the specific group is interested in. And then once you model that, then you can take it into what we call the risk and resiliency framework. And the idea here is once you've understood what is the potential impact, being able to model and develop very specific recommendations for actions that can be taken to mitigate the impact. So we've started working on this using some specific food supply chain, the maize one I talked about, and we're really looking forward to testing the results of this work. So in conclusion, I hope I have given you a few examples to illustrate how AI has the capacity to drive sustainability in food supply chains. Firstly, I hope I have shown you how we can innovatively collect farm level data to drive farmer productivity using our collaboration with Hello Tractor and the IoT tools they have on their tractors. The second example is how satellite data can be able to support a startup, an aggregator like Kumwe, to manage and predict supply of maize and thereby amplifying their impact on reducing post-harvest losses and increasing incomes for farmers. And then lastly, on the mitigation and adaptation to climate change, I hope I have shown you how we are utilizing AI models to predict regional climatic shocks with the aim of driving resiliency and mitigating the negative impacts of climate shocks like floods, heat waves, that, you know, and these we know are becoming more and more prevalent. With that, I want to really thank you for your attention. I look forward to your thoughts, questions, ideas, and to having a really fruitful discussion. Thank you very much, and many greetings from our Nairobi lab.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Charity. I got a couple questions. Now, you in the audience, you also are allowed to ask questions. I'm just saying, this is not a, I don't have the royal rights on this. We have a couple of microphones, so if you do have a question, put a hand up. We have about 5 minutes. I'm going to start while the microphone's coming around. I have two questions to start off with. Why does Nigeria use 8.5 times less fertilizer? I mean, to me, that's a great thing, not a bad thing, because we've got nitrogen problems with all of our outflows from all of our oceans, in our oceans. So tell me a little bit more about that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the point for me is about understanding how much fertilizer is optimal to improve yield. So I think today, when you look at the correlation between the use of the fertilizer and the low yields, I think there's room for improvement to think about how to use fertilizer in a way to maximize production. And I think it starts with understanding the nutrients in your soil. So it's not about just getting to the 120 kilograms per hectare, that's the world average. I think for me is the lesson for us to know is we can understand what does our soil need today, and then how do we efficiently apply fertilizer so that we can improve our yields while managing what you're describing.
Great. So it's really about the precision farming. You're helping with the development of precision farming. Great. Second question is Kumve, Kumve. Is it a cooperative, a company? I'm sorry, I've never heard of it, so I'm assuming someone else hasn't in this room.
No problem. Kumwe is a startup, so they're a company, and essentially, as I mentioned before, they're an aggregator. They help mediate between farmers and premium premium companies that are looking for premium maize. And their work as an aggregator is they also provide this post-harvest processing that really reduces the post-harvest losses that we hear about.
Cool, thank you. Anyone have questions here yet? I see there's 3 hands coming. Let's bring the microphones over. Does anyone have a microphone yet? Okay, let's get the microphone right there. I'm going to take 2 questions. So the 2 people in the back. Usually we start in the front, but sorry, you're going to get the other microphone over there too. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Charity. Great presentation. Very, very interesting. I just have a question for you. My name is Hernan. NDVI has been used already for quite some time, but it's been used by still the same intermediaries like Cargill and AMD. And they're using this to predict the harvests, and this is a great technology, but it sometimes exacerbates their strength as a middleman, because they can just hedge their investments, know what the prices are going to be based on the predicted harvests. So what steps or what are the initiatives to democratize a little bit these technologies and to really make sure that they impact the smallholder farmers in Africa?
Great question. We'll go ahead and take that one, and then the woman back there, thanks. You're next. Okay, go ahead and take that question, Charity.
All right. Thank you for the question. I think it's a fantastic question to ask. I think there's 2 aspects to it. I think one is, first of all, figuring out how to illustrate the benefit of NDVI to farmers as well. I think one of the challenges we've had, particularly with small-scale farmers, is that the resolution in some cases, at least for the affordable and images that you can get, the resolution is not as good for someone who has an extremely small piece of land. So with the Kumwe example, one of the things we've seen is when you start to look at aggregating farms, so that you're looking at clusters of farms, then you can get that information to be valuable. I think the second part is to start to understand how we provide access and value to additional players beyond the large scale who kind of understand what this does for them. So an example for me would be to think about how do we develop a solution using NDVI that's targeted to cooperatives who are very focused on just the interests of the farmer. How do we enable ministries of health or ministries of agriculture or extension workers to be able to utilize the output of NDVI to be able to also make decisions as well? That's how I think about it. But I think that's a fascinating question and something to definitely think about how to do that at scale.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. Then the other ones who had other questions, looking back here in the way back there with the woman in the white, you had a question? Then Charity will be here all afternoon, and afterwards you can be in a little small circle and ask her these questions and even harder questions if you want, like who pays for all this? I'd like to know her. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Charity, for your interesting presentation. I've spent the last 3 years in Malawi working with smallholder farmers. And my question is very closely related to the question the gentleman asked. How do you, now you're developing all these great systems and piloting them, but is there a business model behind? And are you selling those then onto the very, very few agricultural big players in those countries? In Malawi, there is a handful, basically, mostly tobacco. Or is this something that is going to be made available to a wider audience and kind of an open source thing at some point? And then even if I think about how farmers, and I'm aware that Kenya is a little bit more advanced than Malawi, but how can they access this information? Right now, most of them don't have smartphones even. Reception is in the rural areas
Okay.
not there. How do you make sure that this is going to be available?
Go.
Yeah. Wow, fascinating question, and I really hope we can continue this particular question in the roundtable. So here's how I will answer it for now. I think there's gonna be several things to consider. So one for me is understanding that, and this maybe is my personal opinion, that for agriculture in the continent to do well and to survive and to be able to become sustainable, I think there has to be a level of aggregation. So, the middle players are necessary because, there's some certain services that they provide that essentially benefit farmers. Obviously, there's a power play, and I think that happens in every country. So there's a lot to be done on that end, on empowering farmers so that as they're interacting with middle players, there's an even playing ground. The second part for me, I think, is also a targeting question, which is to think about, which types of farmers are going to benefit the most first. I think for all technologies, when you implement, there's kind of a cascade. You have your early adopters, then you kind of have your, second tier, et cetera, and that may have to be, people who have fast access to a smartphone, and then you kind of trickle down. But I think the bigger question is actually figuring out if the technologies that we're trying to implement have enough value to where a farmer is willing and able to make an investment if it will require a mobile phone for them to do that. The last part, I think, for me is also to really think about, let me see what I'm gonna say. On the value part, is to think about which farmers to target. I think I've already said that, so I'll think
That
about
was your
my
point
next
number two. That's all right.
We can answer later. Yeah.
I'm going to call time, so you can hold on to your third one until the circle afterwards. So
Please join us.
yeah, please join Charity to give her a great challenge with some of these, as well as to find some more inspiration about what she can be doing to help you with some of your research, or what you could be doing to help her, and how we go forward. That's the idea about the circles afterwards. So Charity, thank you again so much. I know you're still going to be with us, but we're going to give you a round of applause anyway, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great. Now, we have a couple of seconds or minutes here where we're going to then switch over to Mustafa. And what you see up here also, the QR code, there will be a website where pictures from today and so the presentations, some of the will be there for you to scrape, so you don't have to take every single slide with your photo, but you can take whatever you want. But they will be there, and it's going to be there for you. So one of the things that we're going to be doing with the cards right before we break is answering the question, quite simply, what if I or we could blank by 2030? So specifically having to do with AI and sustainability, some of the things that you hopefully are letting your mind wander as you hear what Charity, Mustafa, and later Jan and Massimo are going to talk about. Then I would be able to do blank. So if I could do blank by 2030, then I or we could blank. And save the world is a very good one to say there. But in all seriousness, so I want you to be thinking about to let our imagination work. Okay, so Mustafa Sise is a research scientist and the site lead of Google AI in Accra, Ghana. He's a professor of machine learning at AIMS, where he is the founder and director of the African Masters in Machine Intelligence, which is the first such graduate program on AI in Africa. And it's truly a great, great pleasure to welcome you, Mustafa. Are you here?
Yes.
Great. Well, welcome to the stage. The stage is now yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you, even though we cannot be physically there due to the COVID situation. But thank you very much for the invitation. It's really an honor to participate and to speak after Charity. I really enjoyed all the presentation, all the applications she presented. So I have been invited to speak in this event, and when I asked what was the main topic that people will be discussing here, I've been told it's about building a sustainable future. I think this is an amazing and timely discussion to have. So I wanted to talk about how do we build um, a sustainable future, and as far as AI is concerned, a future of shared knowledge, because this is, in my opinion, the only way we will have a really sustainable future. It will be a future where knowledge is accessible across the globe. So I work in machine learning. So next slide. I work in machine learning. So machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence, which has seen rapid progress and has now led to great results, applications, fundamental research problems unlocked in the past few years, and is now powering many applications. So in particular, computer vision, for example, has made a great leap. For example, in 2011, the best image recognition models could only get 26% errors on the standard benchmark, where you have to categorize various images in the corresponding classes. But by 2016, we already managed to get 3% error on these benchmarks. So this means that to some extent, we have surpassed humans at recognizing images of various categories. So if we do the parallel with biology, the moment where humans acquired the ability to see and distinguish clearly between different objects in their environment was a crucial moment in intelligence. And so I think this is an equally important moment for machine learning and for artificial intelligence. Next slide. So these progress have triggered a significant interest in the community of researchers, both in traditional machine learning research, but also people working in different areas looking to apply the techniques developed in this field in their respective fields in order to enable new discoveries. And a great illustration of this is the number of papers about machine learning uploaded every day on arXiv. So arXiv is a repository, a scientific repository where researchers upload their latest findings in forms of articles. Now, we can see in this curve that there is pretty much an exponential growth in the number of machine learning papers in the past few years. And this is this trend is still valid. So this graph is from 2019, but the trend is still valid. And machine learning is being used today to solve many different kinds of problems. Next slide. So in 2008, the National Academy of Engineering in the US published what they call the grand challenges of the 21st century. So these are really hard problems, which we believe if they are solved, they will lead to a better life for human beings. So all the challenges that you see here that are highlighted in red are some of the challenges that at Google people are already working on and using machine learning. But in fact, across the globe, people are working on all of these challenges, and one of the key ingredients in making progress in these tough challenges is indeed using machine learning. Now, the problem is with the distribution of the people who are working to advance the field of artificial intelligence, which in turn will unlock all of these challenges. Next slide. So a couple of years ago, a startup in Canada called Element AI did a survey to better understand where the researchers, the AI experts in the world, where do they live? So they summarized the result of their survey, their research, pretty much into this chart that you see here. And the bigger the circle, the larger the number of experts living in the corresponding country on the map. So it's pretty easy to see that most of the people advancing the science and application of machine learning live either in North America or in Europe, and also in China and Japan. As you move down to the southern hemisphere, you see less and less researchers and engineers working in machine learning. I believe that research cannot be detached from the environment in which it is performed. The challenges we decide to tackle are very much informed by the challenges of our daily lives. And the way we tackle them also depends on the perspective that we have culturally, etc. So it is very important to diversify the pool of talent that people, that pool of people working on solving these challenges. And that can only be done by building ecosystems everywhere across the globe. Next slide. So at Google, we have a distributed research organization called Google AI, which has centers in North America, in Europe. In fact, one of the centers is in Zurich. So I have my colleagues sitting not far from you, in Asia. But since 2018, we now have a Google AI Research Center in Accra, in Ghana. So it's the first one here in Africa, and we are working to advance foundational aspects of machine learning, but also to use the outcome of that research to solve challenges that are of particular importance for local populations. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of those challenges that we're looking into. Next slide. So Africa is, next slide. Africa is the youngest has the youngest population on this planet. So I'm myself 35 years old, and in my home country in Senegal, I am older than 65% of the population. So statistics, the National Agency of Statistics say that by 2050, we will have 2.4 billion people living on the continent. And this will represent close to 40% of the population of working age in the world. How do we make sure that these people are fed? Well, AI can play a role. Next slide. By helping farmers increase their yields, by helping them fight the crop disease. Next slide. So the first step into fighting crop disease is to detect, to diagnose such a disease. So this is exactly what we do for human. We go, when we have certain illnesses, we go do some diagnosis, and then we can have the right treatment. But how about with the crops? So in certain places in Central and East Africa, for example, this is really a matter of food security when we consider crops like cassava. So it is important to diagnose these diseases very early so that the right treatment can be applied. However, the accessibility of accurate diagnosis can be problematic, and it is pretty much ad hoc most of the time. And some of the sometimes before the farmers detect the disease, it is already too late. Now, some people in the team here, led by Ernest Moebaze, who is from Uganda, have worked on automating this the disease diagnosis by using image segmentation. So recent computer vision techniques that can be embedded into low-end mobile phones and directly usable by the farmers. So this has been built into apps, and the apps can be directly used by farmers without any AI literacy. They just need to pass, to take pictures of the crops, and the crops are automatically diagnosed. Next slide. So this is the kind of result they can have. And since this time, the system has been greatly improved, and it can detect more and more kinds of diseases. Next slide. So as you can see here in this picture, these leaves are very diseased, and the system manages to identify where the signals are that lead to such a diagnosis. So if the farmers are equipped with such apps, and with the increasing penetration of the use of smartphones across Africa, they will be able to diagnose crop disease early, and hopefully this will lead to improved yields. Next slide. So we have also been working on using machine learning to improve our understanding of populations. So this is a key aspect in development. One way people do it, at least in Africa, is through survey, census. Census is extremely expensive. In many countries, they have other priorities. If you go in DRC, for example, the last time they did a census was about 40 years ago. So literally, people don't know how many people are living in the country. So how do you know where to build schools? How do you know the amount of water that you need, where to build new, where to add electricity capacity, etc. These decisions can be taken if we have more accurate information. And we believe AI can help solve this, and researchers in the team have been working on pushing the boundaries forward in this direction. So next slide. So this is even more important. Next slide. This is even more important if we consider that the world is now more than 7 billion people are living on the planet, and it is increasingly difficult to gather the right information in order to take sound policy decisions. Next slide. Next slide. So if you look at these images, for example, these images are extracted from different parts of Africa. So as you can see, the way we build our cities on the continent is extremely diverse. I've lived in Europe for more than a decade, and I can tell you the diversity of the architectures and the way the cities are built and evolved is in Africa is much larger than what you can see in various parts of Europe, for example. And this is a challenge for existing models that try to extract information directly from images or satellite images, if they are to be applied, if they are to be trained on data globally and applied to specific areas in Africa, for example. Next slide. Next slide. So, for example, given an image like this one, which is a very high density area in Kampala, how do we know, can we build machines, can we build intelligent systems that can reliably estimate the population living in this area? This is extremely difficult because this is very high density. And again, many existing image segmentation techniques working from satellite images fail at this task. Next slide. So if you look at this map, for example, in Togo, you will see all the streets are correctly identified. However, you will see very few buildings in there. And this is an example of a failure mode of building recognition from satellite imagery. Because if you look at the corresponding satellite image, next slide, you will see that all the buildings are there. Now, the consequence of this is that if you take decisions based on information that is gathered from the maps, then this decision it can lead to taking decisions that are not the most appropriate ones. So in the team, next slide, we've built new models of satellite imagery analysis that have a significantly increased capability of detecting the buildings, and therefore allowing us to have a more reliable information. Next slide. So another important problem in and I think Charity talked a little bit about this, which is related to climate change, is how do we predict a disaster? So this is a very important problem in many parts of the globe. So our team sitting in Israel has worked on this in India, for example, and by combining approaches of on satellite imagery analysis, different AI techniques, and hydrology. Next slide. It is now possible for us to predict way in advance which areas of which parts of a given region will suffer from the floods and when those floods may arise. It is possible to predict them several hours in advance. And next slide, to send notification to those who live in those areas so that they can take action on time. So this is a real application of machine learning in the context of climate change. Here for flood prediction, this app has already been deployed in some countries, and I'm hoping to see this generalize. Now, if you look at the set of problems that I have talked about, this is very different from most of the challenges that people showcase when they talk about machine learning in many different parts of Europe or North America. You always hear about self-driving cars, you often hear about robots, you often hear about all those things. Now, the reason why there is a difference between what we work on and the kind of topics or challenges people work on in other places is because we see these challenges, we see the opportunity and the potential for impact. And this is possible because people living there have acquired the knowledge that allow them to solve the problems they believe are the most important ones. And this is the power of shared knowledge. When I left my home country, Senegal, in 2008 to go to Europe to further my studies, do my PhD in Paris, there was no graduate program in machine learning in Africa. When I came back a few years ago, there was still no graduate programs in machine learning in Africa. For us to democratize the access and unlock the potential for people to acquire the tools and solve their own problems, we've designed and created a program, next slide, in machine learning called the African Masters in Machine Intelligence. Next slide. Next slide. I'm hoping that we can show you a video which speaks more eloquently than me about the program.
My name is Sarah Ibrahim. I am from Egypt. I have a master's degree in computer science, and I have also another bachelor degree in Arabic studies.
My name is El-Taib Ahmed. I'm from Sudan. I did my undergraduate at University of Khartoum. I did it in electrical and electronic engineering. I specialized in software. In my final year of my undergrad, I did a project on creating smarter traffic lights, and that was my introduction to the field of machine intelligence. So I used different types of machine intelligence in that project.
My name is Nyawe Jonas. I'm Cameroonian. I'm a computer engineer, graduated in 2016 from Polytechnique Yaoundé.
Je m'appelle Abemini Gifon Marianne. Je suis camerounaise, je viens de Yaoundé, où j'ai eu un master en physique à l'université de Yaoundé 1. Et par la suite, je suis allée à Limbe, à IMS Cameroun, où j'ai eu un master en sciences mathématiques.
My name is Abigail Anka and I'm a Ghanaian. I have a bachelor's degree in statistics and mathematics.
Je suis Awa Samake, je viens du Mali, plus précisément de Ségou. J'ai 2 masters. Le premier, je l'ai fait en Algérie à l'Université des sciences et de la technologie Ouari-Boumedienne. Et le second, je l'ai obtenu cette année, je l'ai fait à l'Université Pierre et Marie Curie.
When I finished my master, I took lots of online courses, but this wasn't enough. So I applied for this program because it was focused, and it has very diverse fields like natural language processing, computer vision, and this will help me decide which topic I will pursue in my PhD.
I applied to this master because the content given here is both very broad and very deep. Machine intelligence is going to be a revolutionary field, maybe as big as the Industrial Revolution. And this program gives you both the knowledge and the connections to start a career in this field.
I applied for the African Masters of Machine Intelligence for 3 reasons. The first reason is that I am a computer engineer, but I have a strong interest in mathematics and its applications. Then the second reason is that there is a revolution going around the world and about machine intelligence. So I wanted to be part of this revolution.
J'ai postulé pour ce master en machine intelligence parce que j'étais motivée, et ce pour plusieurs raisons. Déjà, des experts venant de partout dans le monde pour nous enseigner, venant de Google, de Facebook et tout. C'est pas tous les jours qu'on rencontre ça.
I applied for this program for 2 reasons. First, machine intelligence seems to me as the math of statistics. With my background of statistics and mathematics, I wanted a course where I could explore the applications of the 2 courses at the same time.
J'ai décidé de venir ici pour approfondir mes connaissances, me perfectionner. Parce que là, les cours seront donnés par des professionnels, des experts du domaine. Et là, je ne pourrais qu'en acquérir plus pour pouvoir réaliser mes rêves.
My main objective in this program is that I want to learn the foundations of machine learning.
So I hope to gain 2 things mainly from this program. I hope to gain the necessary knowledge to start a career in machine learning and also the connections.
Mon souhait serait de faire un PhD.
I plan to use this knowledge to interpret machine learning algorithms to be able to use them in health informatics field, because we want a reliable diagnosing system. So this is my plan for the PhD.
My career objective is to be an applied mathematician in research and academia, where my abilities will contribute to positive social change.
Next slide. So when we started the program 2 years ago, Jan, who is my former manager at Facebook, said that this is the most selective the program. At the time, we received 7,000 applications and could only accept 50 of them. In the inaugural lecture of the program, my challenge to the students was that every lecture, every course of the program is taught by some of the leading scientists in machine learning, coming from everywhere, including from Zurich, to lecture the students. And my challenge to them was that in 5 years' time, I'm hoping that every course will still be lectured by some of the leading scientists, but those scientists will come from this first batch of students. Now, the students you've seen in this video have already graduated from the program. Some of them are now my colleagues at Google. Others have gone for PhDs. Others are working in NGOs and government agencies, helping the public sector make sense of their data. But all of them are today contributing in making, using machine learning to help solve some of the toughest challenges we have here in Africa. So I want to use this occasion to highlight the work of ETH4D, who has exciting projects in this area as well, contributing to improving access to high quality education in machine learning and computer science in general in Africa. And I'm very much looking forward to see everything they will do in this space. Next slide. Next slide. So, of course, there is still a lot to do, but being here and seeing all the enthusiasm and see everything happening, the future looks very exciting. Thank you very much. I'll be very happy to discuss and answer questions, but also to talk to you for the rest of the event after the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Mustafa. Thank you very, very much for that inspiring, truly inspiring talk, especially when your first group of graduates, I can't wait for them to be the world's experts. And the idea that research cannot be detached from place or context. I think that's actually quite an interesting one to talk about in the second half. So we're unfortunately going to have to go right into the next talk. So who has a question for Mustafa? Okay, there's one, there's two. So you're going to have to get in the second half. We have no questions right now. We just don't have time. I'm sorry. But you are going to stay around, both of you, right? Okay, so he'll be back here in the circle, and he will be roboting in, and you'll be able to ask anything and everything you want. So Mustafa, really, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the circle in a little bit. So, great, thank you. Let's give him another hand.
Thank you very much. Bye.
So our last interjection this morning, for the first half, is from Jan and Massimo. Jan, you've already seen on stage. He is really focused on how AI can make a significant contribution to protecting our planet. And this is really why he founded the EcoVision Lab. It's one of the entities at the ETH in 2017 to try to really make computer science meet the world's biggest challenges. And Massimo is a very firm believer. He's an executive of Barry Callebaut. Okay, thanks. You know, I didn't even know who they were until like 3 weeks ago, and I was appalled. I didn't know the name. But now, he's a firm believer that technology will be the only way to successfully achieve our objectives, be them as a society and also as a company, and actively engaged in the world of innovation as a member of the board of Mass Challenge, which is a startup here locally. So I'm going to ask the two of you guys to share your thoughts with you, and at the end of their talk, we're going to have these cards for you to fill out. All right, so you can't disappear until you fill out the card. We're going to have them back there on the table if you need to sneak.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Jan, for inviting me here today. Thank you all for being here as well. I think the previous presentation have fixed the bar quite high, but we try our best, right?
Exactly.
So first of all, let me introduce you what a chocolate company has to do with sustainability and with artificial intelligence. I think in the meantime, many of you are familiar with all the thematic of sustainability. It was not the case a few years ago. But a few years ago, we had to start to look into our supply chain and see how the supply chain was having problems that were touching several aspects of sustainability. I mean, among those, certainly many farmers that were living in poverty, child labor, deforestation. We call it thriving nature, but it's about CO2 emission and deforestation. And all the ingredients that enter into a recipe of chocolate that add a different type of problematic link to sustainability. So today we will focus on thriving nature, so CO2 emission, deforestation. There we saw immediately that we had some big challenges out there, and it was also clear that for our customer, for the retailers, for our, let's say, direct customer, the FMCG of food, but also the bakery, the pastry shop, the restaurant that use our product, it would have been no longer acceptable for us to use a product in our production that were in one way or the other linked directly or indirectly with deforestation. So we came with a plan, a 9-year plan. We started in 16, and by 2025, the objective is to become forest positive and carbon positive. It goes without saying that to achieve that target in such a relatively short space of time, we need to stop deforestation. And that was our key point. So then we started with a 3-stage project, if you want. First of all, we started to trace back all our product, all our ingredients. It goes from cocoa, from sugar, to palm, to vanilla, to whatever you can imagine goes in a recipe of chocolate, goes back to the origin till the plantation to understand where they come from. At that point, the second stage was to make a risk assessment of all this product and all their origin. And the third was to monitor where these products were coming from and what was happening there on an ongoing basis. At that moment, we had also a challenge. We had to identify a tool that was kind of globally accepted as one of the most reliable tools to measure how the landscape change would have taken place. And this is where iCarbon stock approach come in. iCarbon stock is indeed a tool that has been put in place a few years ago with the support of many NGOs, among which many of you will know, of course, Greenpeace, which fundamentally, as in the slide here is illustrated, is selecting all the landscape in 6 different parts, among which the first 2 are basically open land and scrub, which are kind of land where, let's say, that are eligible for agriculture, and other 6 parts of vegetation, which goes from young forest to high-density forest, which are, so to speak, untouchable if you want to preserve our carbon stock. So then the other things was to make sure that this kind of tool was also accepted as the tool from our supply chain and from all our suppliers all across the globe. That was not a big challenge because universally this is accepted as if you want, the right benchmark to use, and scientifically mostly also we could say the most solid one. But this tool had a problem, had a weakness if you want, and the weakness lies in the fact that to measure that you need very detailed maps, and detailed maps are often created by people on the ground, and here comes the problem. How can you map with people on the ground? How can you make sure that the maps are also consistent with all different people creating them? And there we realized that there was a big challenge that would have never been able to solve unless a brainchild would have come to help us, right? Here is where artificial intelligence come into the game, because we say we don't want to create a tool to solve the problem in little area. We want to create a tool that solves the problem for the planet. We don't want any deforestation be involved in any of the countries where we source any of the commodities we need. And we want to make a tool that is then also open to everybody to be used as a early alerting system on a global scale. And Jan, here you come into the scene.
All right, thank you, Massimo. Now I'm going to explain quickly the technical approach, how this is going to look. So the first thing is we want an objective, scalable tool that basically does this HCS mapping at global scale and in near real time. So when someone chops down a forest, we see it immediately. This is what we want. And so what we do is we rely on satellite image data. It's the same kind of satellite data that Charity already mentioned. It's Sentinel-2 from the European Space Agency. It comes for free every 3 to 5 days from every point on the globe, except the poles. And we built a machine learning, a deep learning component around that. And instead of using the standard approach where we have multiple views to estimate biomass and vegetation height, we do something inspired by autonomous driving and robots, which is monocular depth. So we have a single satellite image, and from that single satellite image, we estimate the vegetation height, the canopy height, and the biomass, and then the HCS map. And this is how it looks. So input is a satellite image, and output is a vegetation height map and biomass map, and we do this then at global scale. And this is a comparison for some places where we do have reference data. So this is a comparison on the ETH Zurich model that we developed, and the color is encoding vegetation height. And this is for the country of Gabon in Africa. We did have reference data from our NASA colleagues. And on the left, so you see the NASA, a 1 kilometer vegetation height model, and you can see that our resolution is much better. So we get 10 meters, so every 10 meters a point, every 10 meters the vegetation height. And we do this with an accuracy of better than 5 meters, so around 4 meters for trees up to 60 meters high. So, and this is only from a single satellite image, and we can do this basically on the fly. And now if you compare Switzerland, you see also why a lot of the models that are using this data, older data, the NASA data, for example, today, for climate change prediction and so on, why they are not accurate. Because if you look at this country we are living in Switzerland, you look at the NASA model of Switzerland, and the NASA model basically tells us we have trees of 40 meters high in Graubünden in the high Alps, right? It's totally unrealistic. It's not existing. It's completely overestimating the existing models, the tree heights, the biomass that we have in mountainous areas. And we basically solve the problem now with our deep learning engine. And what you can see on the right is we get a large improvement in resolution, 10 meters instead of 1 kilometer, and accuracies between 0 and 40 meters around a bit better than 2 meters. And now the question is how to scale this globally, because we need to train our machine learning approach on reference data collected locally. And there come our NASA colleagues from the NASA JEDI team, and they have put a laser scanner on the International Space Station. So a laser scanner is a device that I will show now. So this is the ISS, and now we will look at this NASA JEDI full waveform laser scanner. And it's looking down on Earth and measuring with 8 different beams all the time the distance to Earth. And since we know the height and the exact position of the ISS, we can basically determine the vegetation height and the biomass down on Earth. But what you also see is that there's a gap between the beams, right? So it gets just a very sparse raster of the Earth. But it does so with very rich data. For every pulse it sends, it gets 1,000 returns. And it measures the vertical structure of all the forest and all the vegetation, right? And this is excellent reference data that we can now use to combine with our existing approach, right? So, but before we can do this, and I tell you in advance, so no serious talk without a serious equation, right? But no problem, no worries. You don't have to understand the equation. The interesting thing is here, you see the input on the left. So this is the so-called waveform. And we want to measure the distance between the blue line and the red line. So the blue line is the top of the canopy. The red line is the ground. And we do this with deep learning. And the problem of deep learning often is that it gives a very good result, but we don't know if we can trust it and how much we can trust it. So we need to estimate the uncertainties. So how certain can we be about that result being true? And this is basically what that equation says, right? So it's not only what we do is we predict what's the vegetation height and the biomass at a particular point and how much can we trust it. So at those places where we cannot trust it, we have to take a different method. All right, so now what we do now is we combine those two things. So we combine the NASA JEDI data that we calibrated now, where we know how we can trust it. We combine the sparse global raster with the dense global prediction of the satellite images. And then we have basically a tool, let's say in 1 or 1.5 years from now, that can predict vegetation height and canopy height and biomass in near real time. For the last slide, I pass back to Massimo.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, I think it's fascinating what Jan and his team put together in these last 2.5 years since we worked together. We are getting there. What we want to basically to do here is to make sure as soon as we are ready that we invite in a room like that all our suppliers to inform we are watching you. And this is not something we want to put there, let's say, for BC. It will be, let's say, open to all the industry. So all the data will be accessible to NGO, to journalists, to whoever is interested. We are now to define how to maintain the tool and to make sure that it's kept up to date with all these images coming in every 3-5 days, as Jan explained, and to make sure that we monitor and detect any change in landscape that may happen in any corner of the Earth, right? And we can establish an early warning that is then transferred with all the coordinates to the NGO that can then intervene. The message to our supplier will be also very clear. I mean, we can't work together unless these things do not happen and stop immediately. And I think this will be an effective tool. It will be at disposal of everybody, and hopefully it will help us to achieve our target 2025 to stop deforestation. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. It's actually quite inspiring to hear of a large global company making a commitment to utilize really great science to try to really, truly do the right thing for the long term. Are you considering yourself truly a market leader, bleeding edge, leading edge, right to middle when we look at other companies using the same and similar tools? Where do you see that?
Well, I mean, we see, of course, we consider anyhow ourselves a market leader. That's no question about that, but yes.
Fair enough. Okay,
but,
go for it.
But when it comes to the technology and the application of technology, I think we are monitoring a bit what is happening left and right. We don't see many people that want really to create this transparency, at least not yet in the industry. It could be they are working, let's say, without making too much noise, so we hope so. Anyhow, the more of this tool we will have out there, the sooner we will be impactful to stop this ecological disaster.
Then Jan, how good are they doing?
I think they are on track. It's more up to us at the moment to really develop the tool. We're basically starting with a different approach before moving to the JEDI data, relying on those HCS maps that consulting companies produced already and finding them extremely inaccurate. And to the point when we compared with an ESA biomass map that we found the consulting companies that produce the maps are systematically underestimating the biomass, which is not surprising given the big companies paying them for that. So I think there's really a need for an objective, automated global tool, right? And I look forward to have this public.
I think that will make the big difference between monitoring a few actors or making this tool applicable for the full Borneo, the full Indonesia, and the full area that are under threat of this deforestation.
Yes. I have two things, and then we're passing the cards out, and you see it's a straightforward, I hope it's a fairly straightforward question. And what I would like to do is I would like to actually collect those cards before you take off, to take a break, and come back, because we're going to collect them. So think about that, write them down. So we're going to collect them. We got a little bowl we can put them in. You're very proud of the fact that you beat NASA.
Yes.
And you should be. I like that. I like that. We saw that on you. You should just start off at the beginning. Opening slide is we're better than NASA.
It's like a Swiss quality approach.
Swiss
right?
quality.
Swiss
we're there.
quality,
You know.
and
seriously, I think that's really awesome. I think that's really great. Congratulations. Because it showed that the misrepresentation of data, the models which we use are only as good as the data we have. And that you can have the best. That was really great. Okay, so I want to congratulate you on that very publicly.
Thank
We heard earlier a couple of questions about how to take what was developed by another global company to bring it down to the democratization of the content, the democratization so that the small man and woman can also defend, protect, benefit. So you're a large global company. How do you see that? How would you answer that same question, what you're doing?
Well, first of all, democratization means also making this tool available to everybody, right? I think if this will be available and will prevent deforestation, it will make all of us benefit out of that. Now, of course, we have the deforestation is done from big companies, sometimes out of need, also from small farmers. We have anyhow to stop it. I think the big message is here that we have to make sure that no company in any value chain is encouraging this kind of practice. So the best thing is to create this tool and make it available for all industry to make sure that it impacts any corner and any supply chain on Earth.
I look forward to it being available. I'm going to hold you to that one. We're all going to hold you to that one, okay? So, guys, thank you so much. And you're here for the second half as well.
Sure.
With a show of hands, who's already finished their first piece? They have 3 pieces of homework. I'm a recovering academic. I can't help it. How many of you are finished with your first piece of homework? Not quite yet. All right. Please fill out something on the card. It really helps us because you here right now have an opportunity to influence the direction of research. All right? You have a pen shortage. Well, here I have 2 right here. I'm a nerd. I have
I'm a nerd.
I have pens and we have pens coming down the aisle there. What? You mean you don't have a sketchbook? Oh, you have a phone. Okay, yeah.
It's a digital festival.
I know it's a digital festival. You're right. I'm sorry about that. But okay, so and I mean this in all sincerity. This is truly a chance because our researchers, Charity, Mustafa, and Jan asked. They said, "We want to hear your voice, the audience's voice. Like, what should we be doing?" Right. So this is really a great opportunity for you to put some thoughts down before we go into the small circles. I see heads are down, so that's always a good sign, you know, they're thinking. This is the really bad elevator music moment. We need to do 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 do. Great. Charity's coming up. Come on up, Charity.
Hi, Charity. We can see you. Come on up.
Come on up. I get a picture with all three of you.
Mustafa's pointing your way. You should see him as well.
He's dating.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get the three of you, the four of you on stage together. There you go. Okay. Wait, we want to get a picture. There you go. Mustafa, stay up by the stage. Okay, so as they're coming up together, just want to again tell you, we're gonna take a shorter break, like say 10 minutes. That's okay, just a comfort break. And in the meantime, we're gonna make 3 small circles with chairs, and Charity and Mustafa will be joining each of their circles, Massimo and Jan in their circle. So here's just a quick show of hands, for chair distribution. Who wants to sit in the circle with Charity? Cool, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, with Mustafa? With Jan and Massimo? Awesome. It's always wonderful when there's a nice distribution. That works really well as someone who's trying to host it. So we're going to, if you guys can turn around, then Andy can take a picture of you. So can you flip all the way around and you can see Andy's going to be right there. Charity, you guys turn to your right. There you go. And don't do it. You're going way too far away. I can come down and lift you up and turn you.
That's not digital.
I just might do that. Watch this. You are going to go for a little flight. Woo! Here we go. There's more than one way. Are you okay? You didn't get airsick, did you? Okay, cool. All right, there you go. Wonderful. Okay, so let's take a break and say thank you, everybody. And if you can put your cards, because you're going to be able to fill out another time. After you've had your circle, we're going to give you another card, because I'm hoping you're going to have another idea or two, which might come up after you sit in a circle. Okay? 10-minute break?
Right. Yes.
We good? I'm going to set my alarm. Thank you.
All right.
Woo.